Hey everyone, this is Jimmy Cook, Director of Production and Publishing for Vineyard Worship UK and Ireland. We release new music on the first Friday of every month. You Speak is Vineyard Worship's monthly single for November 2020 and beautifully balances simplicity and depth. This new song cleverly explores the whole story of the gospel and is a timely release as we all face this year's continuous difficulties. Though the world is in chaos, the Lord's voice is still at work, ready to bring new things into being. Written by Vineyard Worship's Jody Alexander Fry and Nashville-based Leslie Jordan, this collaboration highlights the two seasoned songwriters' talent and sensitivity.
You speak and make light, and you extinguish all of the darkness. You speak and make light. You speak and make right. Chaos to order. The sky from water. You speak and make right. You did and you do. Make all things new. And it was, and it is, and it will be good.
Check out You Speak and all of our singles wherever you listen to music.
I personally believe in the fact that we have a civilization or a world that wants to take the road most traveled, the fine paved road that's easy. I'm a husband, I have multiple kids at home, and again, I'm not speaking from experience because I don't have that, but it's easier for me to come back home after a long day of work, sit down in front of the TV, Netflix, and chill. It's easier for me to take this road. It's easier for me to do this opportunity. It's easier for me to just hate that person instead of stepping out of my way and saying, hey, Adam, let's talk this out. You and I have some issues in the past, let's figure this out. Our civilization as a whole, I think, needs to take difficult opportunities. And for some people, that's fitness. I mean, don't get me wrong. No matter what level you're at in CrossFit, it's still difficult. It's not like, oh, you've been to the games 5 times, it must be easier. No, it doesn't get any easier. Just now, it's harder. You just go a little bit faster, or you're a little bit more efficient. But I think as a whole, there can be lessons learned from CrossFit, especially from doing difficult things for anybody in any space.
The Ferment. You're listening to the Ferment podcast, conversations about worship and transformation. Today's guest is CrossFit Games athlete Jacob Heppner.
Jacob Heppner, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, glad to be had. Glad to be here.
That is right. Well, hey, if you are a regular part of this podcast, you might be wondering, who is Jacob Heppner? However, a lot of you who are listening to this podcast right now, you know who Jacob Heppner is. He's a CrossFit Games athlete, and this is kind of new territory for us here on the Ferment. So, Jacob, I just want to say I'm excited to finally talk to somebody who does what you do.
Yeah, I'm excited to just blow your mind and talk about random things. Let's do it.
That is great. That is great. Well, hey, here's what I want to do before we get into the meat of the podcast. Could we just do some CrossFit quick hitters?
Yeah, absolutely. Hit me with it.
All right. Thrusters or burpees?
Burpees.
Running or rowing?
Running.
Bikes or swimming?
Bike. Times 10.
Sprint or grind?
Grind.
Tacos or pizza?
Tacos.
That was easy.
No,
You heard it here first, kids.
so easy.
So easy. Well, Jacob, I have a bunch of stuff I want to talk to you about, but one of the things we typically do here on this podcast is we just have people share a bit of their story up front. Like, where are you from? What kind of family did you come from? Was it a family of faith? So maybe you could just give us a little bit of background into your life, especially when you were kind of growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I was born and raised in the state of California. I know, God bless me, I survived and I escaped. Born and raised in the state of California. Actually grew up in my dad's side of the family is very Christian based. I grew up in the church. Grew up doing Awana for
That's right.
Majority of my life.
That's right.
People saluted me when I walked into a room with Awana because I was so high ranking. No, I'm just kidding. I did Awana games, Awana camp, the whole 9 yards up into high school, and actually into a little bit of high school. And then we actually moved out to the state of Missouri for a little while and finished out high school there. And then eventually went to college. I was from first grade to fourth grade, I was homeschooled, and my mom was my teacher, and my sister, who was a year younger than me, was my only schoolmate. And I graduated class of 0 myself, or 1, class of 1.
Yeah, that's right.
Graduated class of 1. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's good. So I guess I also wonder too, were you always an athlete? Like growing up, did you just play every sport?
No, I'm actually, how I usually define myself, I have a pretty good self-deprecating sense of humor, is I am the most unathletic person you will probably ever meet. If you put me like, hey, let's go dribble a basketball, or let's go like hit a baseball or do these things, it is not going to happen. So I grew up playing football all throughout, also in college. Was decent at it. Decent. I never started. I was special teams, but I was always, what I really always enjoyed was staying in shape, working out, and the fitness and the training aspect of it. To me, the competitions were fun, but to me, the idea of the lead up into these things is what I enjoyed the most.
Got it. So when did you come into contact with CrossFit?
Yeah, so got an internship up here in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, which is a military and army installation up north of here. And I showed up there. I graduated with a degree in mathematics. So I went there for an internship, and I was training. I had still 1 more year left of football in my senior year. And so I was out there, during my lunch break or during the nights, and I was training for my last year of football.
Yeah.
And a couple of guys that I work with noticed that, and they said, hey, you're a collegiate athlete. We're doing this thing called CrossFit. You want to come attend? And I was like, okay, well, this guy's like a higher ranking guy than me. So I was like, okay, yeah, sure. I'll come hang out with you. I said, what time is it? And I should have asked that question first. I agreed to the situation before asking the who's, what's, when's, and how's. And he goes, well, it's at 5 a.m. And I'm like, it's a freaking devil's hour, bro. Like,
Yeah,
I ain't
right.
waking up at 5 a.m. to do nothing. And so I did show up, grabbed a buddy of mine to show up. We showed up at a gym, and because it was on Army installation, the gyms there, the affiliates there, a little bit more different than your regular private sector affiliates. It was like a humongous gym, like in a big, huge building, and it wasn't really super ran like a regular gym. There wasn't really a coach. It was just kind of like everyone showed up and did the kind of the same thing at the same time. And so I just vividly remember getting yelled at, like, you're not going fast enough, because they didn't explain it to me. Like, it's for time. They were just like, it was like rowing in toes the bar. And I remember getting yelled at, like, was it rowing hard enough? And I'm just like, man, I look good. I look good rowing on this machine.
Yeah, I feel like I'm
good.
working.
I feel like I'm working. And they're like, row harder. And I'm like, what? Like, I come from a quality rep standpoint. Like, hey, we're going to bench 5x5, not necessarily row 500 meters per time. And I remember getting done with it. And the guy pulls me aside and said, hey, yeah. He goes, you'd be pretty good at this if you put some more time into it. Not sure if that was a slap in the face or a compliment.
Well, in the vineyard, we call that a compliment burn.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
So he goes, hey, do me a solid. He goes, when you go back to work today and you're sitting at your computer going clickety clack, he's like, look up what the CrossFit Games is. And I'm like, okay, whatever, bro. Like, and so I looked it up, and I quickly realized that you could compete in this. And there was a community, a pretty tight knit community that existed outside of just this one gym I was in. Like, it was all around the world. And I knew that after I got done with CrossFit for my 1 year I had left, CrossFit with my football, with 1 year I had left, that I'm a very competitive individual. And I knew that, and when I'm done, what am I going to do? Like, I can't, I can join a regular basketball league, which I suck at, or a baseball league, which I suck at. And I was like, I don't need to bring my competitive nature into a workspace that's an unhealthy environment. And quickly realized that you can compete in this and travel the world with this, and at some point possibly make money from it, and make a job out of it. And so I just never looked back. So that was it.
Yeah. So you were kind of hooked from the very beginning.
Yeah, I remember vividly telling my best friend at the time. I tried to explain CrossFit. I was trying to explain CrossFit to my best friend, and I had just done maybe a week of it. So trying to explain CrossFit and you barely know anything about it was probably the most hilarious conversation I've ever heard. Well, there's this thing called CrossFit. It's kind of like a cult. Like you cut your thumb, put your blood print on the paper and sign up,
Yeah, that's it.
And so I explained how the CrossFit Games worked. And I said, I want to go to the CrossFit Games. I want to compete in this. And at the time, who then turned out to be my wife later on in life, she had no idea what I was talking about. I'm sure she was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. That sounds great. But yeah, so.
Okay. So you even brought up something that I had written down in my notes. Sometimes CrossFit is a little culty. Talk to me about why. Because like my family and I have 4 kids, my 3 olders and myself and my wife. We all go to the box here in town. This is something we do together. And I understand the appeal, but maybe from an outsider, can you explain to people why CrossFit has the gravity for people who are in it the way it does?
Yeah. So first, I think we need to define the word cult and culty. I think when people hear the word cult or culty, they immediately gravitate towards freaking pentagraph or freaking 6-sided star. We're sitting around freaking chanting, cutting up cats or whatever, something bad. And I think when you look at the word cult, even though it has some negative connotations to it, the positives behind a cult is a close, tight-knit community. Now, you may not agree with anything they do in that close, tight-knit community at all, but that's fine. You can't get away from the fact that they have a close-knit community and they care for each other, even though it's probably weird.
Yes.
But I think what's one thing people can learn, I think a lot of people can learn, and even the church can learn from a CrossFit community, because I think when you come into a gym, and I know there are obviously bad apples out there in terms of affiliates, it always exists. But I know in terms of our gym here, like we care for each other. We care for each other more than just outside the gym. We hang out outside of the gym more than just our Friday class or Sunday in church, right?
Yeah.
So we spend time with each other. We care about each other, and we're there for each other if we need each other. And I think there's a lot of communities outside of CrossFit that can learn to do what we do.
Yeah.
Because we do it so well, so effortlessly, and we really, honest to goodness, care about each other.
Yeah, I was thinking about some of the side benefits of CrossFit besides just getting in shape. Like clearly that's a huge benefit, especially now that we live in a culture that's so like screen oriented.
Yeah.
Like we just need to move our bodies. But I was thinking about some of the other side benefits, and like community is at the top of the list there. But then the next thing I was thinking about this week was, I just think it's really important to do something hard. I know that's kind of like counterintuitive, but there's something about doing difficult things 3 or 4 times a week with people that's really great.
Yeah, I personally believe in the fact that hashtag here comes Heppner's rant session is we've gone in a community. We have a civilization or a world that wants to take the road most traveled and the fine paved road that's easy. I want to come. I'm a husband. I have multiple kids at home. And again, I'm not speaking from experience because I don't have that, but it's easier for me to come back home after a long day work, sit down in front of the TV, Netflix, and chill. It's easier for me to take this road. It's easier for me to do this opportunity. It's easier for me to just hate that person instead of stepping out of my way and saying, hey, Adam, let's talk this out. You and I have some issues in the past. Let's figure this out. And I think, so going off the fact that our civilization as a whole, I think needs to take difficult opportunities, and they need to take those opportunities. And whether that's, and for some people that's fitness. I mean, don't get me wrong. No matter what level you're at in CrossFit, it's still difficult. It's not like, oh, you've been in the games 5 times, it must be easier. No, it doesn't get any easier. Just now it's harder, but you just go a little bit faster.
Yeah.
Or you're a little bit more efficient. But I think as a whole, there can be lessons learned from CrossFit, especially from doing difficult things for anybody in any space.
Yeah, I know that all the really good stuff in my life, like really good stuff, and you even mentioned things like working things out with another person, forgiving someone, staying in love with my wife, not giving up on some really hard project at work. All of the good things, there's challenge involved in them. And there's something about this daily routine that reinforces that ability inside of my own person. And I don't know, I just think it's great.
Yeah. I mean, the hardest things in life are the things that give you the most joy, I feel like.
I think so too.
You think about it, like a good example is like when I was a kid, we had a walnut orchard on my property in California. Hate walnuts. I hate them now because we pick them up every summer. They're freaking worse. And we'd crack them and sell them to a local nut company. So it wasn't like I was just picking up walnuts and giving them to them raw. I'm cracking these darn suckers. Hate walnuts this day. And anyways, my parents were like, hey, obviously you crack the walnuts and you'll keep the money and you and your sister can do what you want with it. I think when you work for something like that, we decided with the money we had, we wanted to buy a trampoline. When we bought this trampoline, we cared for this trampoline. We had this trampoline for freaking years. And you think to yourself, when you work hard for something, whether it's a trampoline, a bike, a car, a relationship, whatever the case may be, you tend to treat it with more respect and give it the love and nurturing it requires than as opposed to if my parents just bought me a trampoline and I'd been like, okay, I'm just going to trash it. But man, oh man, when you play on that trampoline, you think, man, I had to crack a lot of walnuts for this.
That's right. It's totally true. Well, let me ask you something else now. I followed you for a bit on Instagram and I love your YouTube channel. And one of the things,
to bring it back. I haven't used it in a while.
you got to get back to it, man, because it's like inspiring on the fitness side, but it's also hilarious. There's a lot of fun and levity in it. But one of the things I've noticed about you, it seems like you have a lot of energy and maybe even joy. Where does that come from? Is that just you?
I think when you look back at what you get to do in life, how I usually approach my certain stage in life right now, and I've told this to a lot of people that I've either trained with or hung out with, is unfortunately or fortunately, it depends on person to person. A lot of people these days tend to go to work, punch the clock, work 9 hours, come home. You can find joy in that. Don't get me wrong. And for some, I could not personally, but luckily I had the blessing of being able to wake up, work out, and make a living doing that, and have companies around me that I'm passionate about and people around me that I'm passionate about. And so when people do something like this or are in that stage in life and they don't appreciate or have joy because of the circumstances and the blessings they've been given, I think to myself, you're going to look back 10 years from now and you're going to miss these moments. Hopefully it's better in 10 years, but you're going to look back and think, at that moment in life, that was awesome. And you want to look back and say, man, I enjoyed every single one of those moments. I enjoyed meeting every single person in that community. Whether or not I want to be friends with them, I enjoyed the opportunity to do those things. And I think people can learn from that in terms of being joyful of every moment you've got. It might not be super fun. No one likes to be criticized, but you can sure learn a lot from it. And still taking joy in something like that is important.
Well, part of what I hear you saying, Jacob, is that you're kind of like living out your dream a little bit. I hear a little bit of that. I hear a little bit of, I'm doing what I really love. Is that some of it too?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, as a kid, you always daydream of doing. This is not what I daydreamed about. Okay, as a kid, I wasn't like, I want to be a professional athlete because I knew at an early age, there's no way I can catch a football or throw a baseball. But luckily, someone decided fitness as a professional sport. So God bless you, whoever did that.
That's right.
Yeah, I think right now, obviously, I'm getting older. I'm 30. I'm getting older in this sport, not older in general, but older when it comes to competing in a professional sport like this. And so the gears are starting to shift a little bit in terms of what these next few seasons are going to look like for me. But still, I want to be able to live my dream out. And your dreams will change as you get older. It changes from, I want to maybe as a teenager, this wasn't me because I don't care about cars. Maybe it was like, I want to drive a fast car and go to a really cool school. Then I want to get a beautiful wife. And then maybe I want beautiful kids and a beautiful house. And your dreams change as they go. And I think right now for the period of life that I'm in is those are starting to shift in terms of what do I value? Where is my time best spent? and what do I have for a dream for my 30 to 40, the next 10 years leading into my 40s.
Yeah. Well, kind of like bouncing off of that, I'm wondering how you maintain your energy when such a big part of your job is doing hard things every day. Like,
I nap twice a day.
I train, I go to the gym, but you train, like you train all the time. And I know that can take not just a physical toll on your body, but it can even become emotional sometimes, because our bodies and our emotions and our spiritual lives, it's all connected. So how do you maintain that when you're just like, your job is to grind?
Oh yeah. I don't know. Sometimes I look back and I think to myself, my life would be a lot easier if I had an 8 to 5 job. I thoroughly believe that, because you're right. It's easy to show up, have someone tell you what you need to do. I need you to print off this paper and do this, whatever. That would be easy. But I've always been a risk taker. I love the concept of a little bit of unknown there and just jumping off a cliff and saying, hey, we're going to do this. It's either going to fall on its face or it might do okay. Who knows? Let's just try it out. But in terms of the emotional and the toll on you, I think it's something I did for so long, you get used to it. And for a while, I had a full-time job working for the U.S. Army as a DoD civilian. And then I worked for a web development company as a project manager. And it wasn't actually until not this past June, but the June before, so June of 2019, that I actually decided to quit my full-time job and go full-time into the sport. And that was a risk, right? So I'm saying, hey, full-time job, salary, deuces, and benefits, goodbye. And I'm going to go do this thing over here. But without taking those jumps and those risks, you wouldn't be able to see the other side of the envelope and to see the benefits of, now I can start companies. Now I can explore the entrepreneur side of me and see what else is out there for me to just tackle.
So part of what I'm hearing you say is that the energy comes from just keep following that next thing, that next dream. There's something about risk taking that is energizing. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say.
For lack of better terms, I like leading. Yeah. I like being in charge. I like leading and running things. I like providing for people. I like building things. It gives me joy to build things, and it gives me joy to help people in financial freedom, whether I'm hiring them or contracting out to them. To me, that brings me joy.
That's great. Let me ask you this, just back to workouts. I was talking to my wife and she wanted to know, have you ever gotten into a workout and you just quit? You're like, I just can't today.
I put them on. So the difference of how I approach, never be the most successful athlete in our sport. Okay. And so sometimes very successful athletes usually have a better social media presence, and that just goes hand in hand. You want to follow a winner. I get that. But I've actually done surprisingly well in the social media space, not because I'm a winner, but because I just enjoy showing the rawness of the sport and of my life. I'm not here to sugarcoat it. I'm not here to tell you it's all sunshine and rainbows. And I have absolutely for sure put workouts on YouTube where you literally watch me quit. I'll put them up. I don't care. I'll let you see it.
Yeah.
That's the realness and the rawness of life that people connect with. People like to follow a winner. People love seeing that. But people also connect with someone who quits because they also quit. And it's an unrealistic expectation if all they ever see is someone winning and they don't see the quit in them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, some days we just don't have it, do we?
No, been there.
Yeah.
Been there, tapped out.
Been there, tapped out. That's me. Well, let me ask you this. This podcast is called The Ferment, and kind of the ongoing metaphor is things change. Things start one way. They start maybe as grapes and they end as wine, right? And one of the things we like to talk a little bit about here is spiritual transformation, or just how we've changed as a person or in our soul. I'd be very interested in your own life. Like what's changed in your own soul or in your spiritual journey? What has grown and deepened? Or what have been the things that forced you into change?
So first of all,
Yeah.
we own a vineyard on our property.
No way.
Yeah. We have a 2-acre vineyard clarification. I owned, past tense, 10 acres of land with the house, the barn the house you guys have always seen for the past 5 years. We actually sold it a couple months ago, and we bought 50 acres down the road, and we're renovating a house and building on that thing. So I used to own 2 acres of grapes. And let me tell you right now, absolute worst product to ever put on your property. They are because it requires so much manual labor. It is like, there's nothing out there that exists to help you. It's like almonds where you have like machinery to help you. It's like, no, I'm going to trim this myself. So I thought it was funny that this is, obviously you guys are looking at the fruits of the spirit and looking at grapes, and yeah. I hate grapes. But anyways,
what's interesting is, Jacob, my family and I, we have about 8 acres of wine grapes on our property. So I know.
Yeah, it's the worst. And because a lot of things in my life I look at from an ROI perspective, like I'm not going to spend time doing something if I don't see if I don't know there's a return on investment from it. And grapes to me was like the lowest ROI. I was like, I'll spend 10 hours trimming this vineyard and they'll continue to grow.
That's right. They will.
But I think in terms of spiritual growth, like you're mentioning, is this sport, and most sports in general are very selfish, are very self-focused, right? And especially this sport. A team sport is obviously a little bit less, but still there's a self part of a team. And I think that that's something that I have had to work on over years. Is you get into a sport where it's you, I need to train, I need to do this, I'm going to the games, I need to qualify, I need to improve my standings, I need a podium, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. And so you can become so self-centric that you just get used to it. And it becomes difficult to work with other people and to compromise. And that's been something that I've had to work on and will have to continue to work on, because you get calloused over years of doing the same exact thing. And so that's definitely one area that we're continuing to work on to this day and going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting that just doing what you do and being who you are, it kind of brings all that up to, and that happens to all of us, right? It's not just something that happens to you, it happens to all of us.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Let me talk to you about this. We're in the middle of like Corona moment. It's the plague years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to me about how COVID has like affected your year. And just like what you do, because it's affected all of us. Like, I mean, like on the worship side here, for guys and gals who lead worship and try to do church, we've had to reinvent everything. So talk to us about like how you've had to reinvent and how it's thrown sand in the gears for you as a CrossFit athlete.
I believe is if you press sand hard enough, does it not create a diamond? Is that true, or am I making that up?
I think it's coal, but I like the image. I think
we'll use coal throwing into a grind.
Yeah, that's it.
I tend to look at things from a very positive standpoint. We could sit here all day long and talk about COVID and how many people would die or whatever. It's a worthless conversation. It exists. It's there. It is somewhat of an issue. But I think if you sit here and only dwell on the fact the negatives, you'll forget to see the positive aspects that occur behind it. I think society in general is going to grow because COVID is teaching us things that we wouldn't have learned had it not happened. Like there's a lot of worthless things we do that we can do online. There's a lot of things that we can do that we don't need to be in person for. I think people at the end of this will realize how important family is, because they're going to spend more time with them, because they're at home taking those Zoom calls. They're spending more time with their kids. And I think they're going to realize that, man, 2020 wasn't fun, but I still got to spend time with my family. So that's one aspect of it. From my perspective, personally, when COVID hit, I was actually in China in December. So I probably brought it here. You're welcome, everybody. And I was in Chengdu. I wasn't in Wuhan. But close enough, whatever. And since March, I've actually helped started 3 different companies. And so I decided, look, I can sit here and wallow and Netflix and chill. And because, I mean, from my perspective, for the CrossFit Games, like, we weren't even sure if it was going to happen. So it's kind of like, it's hard to train for something if you don't know if it's going to occur. And you can sit here and just sit around and think, oh, woe is me. But I decided to flip that, and I actually started what are becoming 3 pretty successful companies, and I already had 2 in the Bay already. And so I spent most of my time working on those. One of them being the concept of CrossFit gyms obviously use Zoom as a Band-Aid solution to provide fitness to online virtual clients like yourself if your gym closed. I'm sure you jumped on a Zoom call at one point this COVID season. Well, a few of us in March decided, well, that's stupid. Zoom's not the perfect fit for us. And so we actually created a solution that we launched live this week that is essentially a reimagining of Zoom. It's not Zoom. It just takes the concept of Zoom and says everything we've struggled with over this past couple months because of Zoom that we were like, man, it'd be cool if we had XYZ, we put it in there. And so that's what Scott Panchik is a good buddy of mine. That's what me and Scott and a couple guys launched together just in time for this second closing.
Yeah.
So, I think when you look at COVID, like I mentioned before, you can sit here and wallow and think, woe is me, or you can take the best out of the circumstance. Now, I'm not saying that start a company. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is it's what's best for you. Mm-hmm. And for someone, whoever that is, it might be, hey, this is a perfect opportunity to spend more time with my family. It's a perfect opportunity to finish this book I started. It's a perfect opportunity to, I don't know, go house shopping, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I think people just need to find the joy and the positivity in whatever circumstance it is.
Yeah. And part of what I hear you say is that even in moments like this, there's an opportunity in it. If we'll look around, I mean, we feel the constriction, but there's some opportunity somewhere.
It's a lot of people that waste their life and waste their time complaining, whether it's on social media or in person. I got to wear a mask, or, oh, I can't go to the movies. There are better things in life to do than sitting around and complaining. And people are going to look back and think to themselves, man, I really wasted 2020 wallowing in sorrow and wallowing in, and again, there's a time in the season for sorrow. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But wallowing in the concept of, well, woe is me, when they can go out and flip that switch and do something. You don't want to look back and say, I wasted that year. You want to look back and say, that was my best year, and that was a turning point.
I love that. Well, let me ask you another fitness question. Well, 2 more
Sure.
fitness questions, and then we'll get to the last 2 questions. Number 1, it seems like maybe we are going back on some kind of a lockdown. And probably, a lot of people who are listening to this podcast may be thinking, gosh, maybe I do need to get more fit. A lot of people who listen to this podcast, I know are already doing like CrossFit, or maybe they ride mountain bikes, or they do something.
Sure.
How can people just be like, take an initial step towards improving their fitness, even in a moment like this, like where maybe their gym is closing, or maybe they have to be restricted in some way? Is there something they can do? Or
yeah, I think the best bet is you just got to find a small community. Like stuff like that, when you attack certain circumstances like that, you need a group of people around you that are like-minded. Obviously, your state's going to tell you, don't hang out with other people. But I mean, what I would recommend is find a group you're close with, whether that's a couple small people from your small group, or people that you work with, or whatever. Combine your equipment, make a little garage gym, and that's how you get it. Or go mountain biking together, or every Thursday we're going jogging. Like I think a lot of problems from COVID, and again, I'm not a doctor, would be fixed if we just focused on ourselves. And I'm not saying in a selfish way, but at some point you need to look at yourself and say, I need to take things in control, whether that's I'm addicted to certain things, or whether that's I needed to take my body under control because it's still a temple, and treat with respect, and that's not Fran. I'm just kidding. But like treat with respect and exercise it and put it through the ringer and do hard things like that. And I think that's still an opportunity. I think there's more opportunity now with COVID to go work out than there ever has been, because you're already stuck at home. And let's be real. At this point, your owners know, your like bosses know you don't have to work that much at home. So go running. It's easier now. You got a shower down the hallway.
That's correct. I like that. Efficiency. Okay, one more fitness question, then I'll ask you a couple more, and we'll be wrapped. On the fitness side, what did you think of the last event of the games this year at Atlanta?
Well, it was cool. Yeah, I thought it was different. I really enjoyed the fact they put the girls and the guys together.
I thought that was cool too, huh?
And I wish they had it for more events, if I'm being honest, but I really enjoyed watching them all work out together. That was pretty cool for sure.
Yeah. And it's amazing to see how an event, and if you are listening to this and going, what are they talking about right now? Just go on YouTube. It's there. But it's amazing to see how, depending on what the event is, the girls can roast the guys.
No, I mean,
it's amazing.
I think if you actually looked at a majority of the events, excluding obviously the one where Max lifts, that definitely occurs. I mean, I work out full time with a 14-year-old girl, and most people are like, he works out with a 14-year-old girl. That's hilarious. He probably whoops her. That's not true. I get whooped all the time. And I think what people don't realize is a lot of sports tend to create pride, whereas CrossFit's a little bit different in a sense that if you do it right, it doesn't really make you super prideful. You tend to really respect those around you.
Yeah. Well, this is something that happened just a few weeks ago at our little gym. A workout came out and it had like a lot of rowing in it. And so the tall guys, there's a couple of like really tall, strong guys in the gym. They destroyed everyone, right?
Yeah.
But then a few days later, there's a workout in it, and it had like a lot of strict handstand push-ups in it. And a couple of the girls and a couple of the small guys just destroyed everybody. I like that. It's there's going to be a moment when your thing comes up and it kind of evens the playing field.
Oh, absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah. So fun. All right. Hey, last two questions. Number one, what's a perfect day?
Perfect day. What does a perfect day look like? Perfect day. I get up, I break a sweat, eat a little bit, break a sweat, come back. Was the stupid quote, like, you don't work a day in your life if you enjoy it. Mm-hmm. I thoroughly enjoy the companies I get to work in and work with. And so for me, coming back, spending a few hours working on that, take a nap. I love naps, like at least 2 naps a day. Like 20 minutes is all you need. Just lay down, jerk yourself awake, and then you're off and at 'em again. And then go back to the gym, hang out a little bit with the community here, go back home, hot tub, hang out with the dog and the wife, eat some dinner. I mean, that's pretty much just a regular day.
A regular day.
That just makes me happy.
Oh, that's good. That means you're doing it right, Jacob.
That's right.
Okay, last question. And this is the question that we end every podcast this season with. What are you dreaming about right now?
Right now, companies I have, I want them to thoroughly succeed. I want to sell them. I want to not worry about money the rest of my life. I want to do some really cool things.
So that's the next venture is just growing business, right?
Yeah, that is exactly correct.
High five. Well, Jacob, hey, thanks for coming on and just sharing a bit of your day with our Vineyard Worship community.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
Dude, you're welcome here anytime. Hey, listen, let's hope that COVID blows out of here and we want to see you at the games next year, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking 2021 season's going to be the same as 2020. I don't think it's going to change.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be similar, which was an okay, fun year. It was decent, you know?
Yeah. But maybe by fall.
Maybe by fall.
Hopefully
it'll be better. Let's hope.
All right, man. High five.
Hi everyone, this is Melissa Keller, Events Director for Vineyard Worship. If you've been enjoying the podcast, I've got a couple of ways you could really help us. First of all, review the podcast on iTunes or the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Also, connect with us on social media, Instagram at the Ferment Podcast and Twitter at FermentCast. Thanks for listening. See you next time.